Hey everyone, it's Angela Stevens, and I am the podcast host to Refocus with Angela. And I'm so excited today because I've got one of the coolest guests that I think I've ever interviewed before. I read his bio before, and it's very, very impressive. But today we have Eric Maisel. He is an author, he's a speaker, he's a coach, and more importantly, he's a creativity coach. I think that's the best way to describe him. And he has a terrific background. But first of all, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great being with you, Angela. Love to be here. Hope we can keep this alive as we have big winds outside. So if the power goes off, it's not me being rude.
Okay, so now where are you based?
30 miles east of San Francisco, Bay Area.
Kidding. Love the Bay Area. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Well, if you do, we'll just start over when you call back. But thank you so much. So first of all, I know people are going to say creativity coach. Now there's a lot of coaches out there, right?
Yep.
So what is a creativity coach?
Yeah, the simple way to say it is a life coach for creative folks. Creative and performing artists have their particular issues, whether it's marketplace issues or whether it's getting the work done, resistance to the work, blockage. There are all kinds of characteristic issues that creatives face. And creativity coaches are trained to work with those issues and help creative folks get their creative work done and also move it out into the marketplace.
You know, that's fascinating because the types of people that you work with, I would assume they're writers or they're actors or performers. Is that right?
Clowns, mimes.
Really?
Yes.
So tell us, so for, I love theater and I love acting and all of that, but tell us, what is the main thing or one of the top maybe two things that people come to you and say, Eric, I'm really struggling today with?
For let's say a writer, it's getting the work done. It's showing up to the work. And for a performer, it's performance anxiety, typically. Most performers experience performance anxiety, some at a very low level, so it's not a tremendous issue. But maybe 25, 30, 40% of performers experience it at enough of a level that they need to figure out what to do about it, different from taking anxiety drugs for it. And there are plenty of things to try, and I've got lots of menu items for them to try, but it would be performance anxiety for performers and getting the work done for creatives.
I can truly relate. When you have a business and sometimes you got to make those sales calls or you got to go in, if you have a business, you don't have a boss standing over you. And it's, for me, I was a single mom for 10 years and I worked an all commission job. Would I recommend that? No, but we do what we have to do and we have to figure out what works for us.
And typically there's no real deadline for many of these things. If you practice on a given day, that's up to you. If you write on a given day, that's up to you. And so if there's anxiety threading through the process, the number one thing we do if we're anxious is to flee the encounter. We get out of there. So that's why so many creative and performing artists aren't practicing their guitar or doing their writing, is that there's just a little bit of anxiety there. And what they want to do is get away from that anxiety so they don't show up to the work.
Wow. So is one of the areas to rejection? Do they struggle with rejection?
Rejection and all of the related ideas like criticism and pushback. And so Freud said that he thought that all blockage was self-censorship. Now, all blockage is not self-censorship, but that's a big deal item. And you can imagine if you're a memoir writer and you're trying to decide if you really want to put down on paper this thing about your sister or your father or the butcher or about anybody, if you really want to reveal anything, that provokes anxiety and you're probably going to censor yourself. That's why memoirists take so long to get their books done, 15, 20 years, and they never get them done. They haven't actually resolved that basic question of whether they want to reveal themselves or not.
Wow, that's really interesting. So I got a question for you. So my son, all of our products are created through through the eyes of a child with ADHD, and he's now in college. But when he was younger, he was a child actor. And if you remember the plush animals at Hallmark and they had the voice singing, well, he was the voice of the Hallmark Q-Pig. So the Cupid shuffle, only Q-Pig shuffle. And it was so cute. And they came out for 4 years. I think he made $150 off of that being non-union, right?
Too bad.
Yeah, exactly. But it's followed him all the way up to college in embarrassing moments and good moments. But the reason I say that is he was in Los Angeles and we took him to a lot of auditions. And one thing I did, and you can tell me as a mother if this was a good idea or not, we would go on an audition and he would come out and I said, okay, now what do we do? And I would always have him rip up the script and throw it away. And I said, okay, we're done. And if we get called back, we deal with it then. And many people, whether they like that idea or not, I just didn't want him to really dwell on how did he do, what did he do wrong at that age. And he looks back on that. And I think he found that to be very helpful.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's very smart. There's a branch of psychology called psychosynthesis, and one of their big ideas is disidentification. And what it's sort of like detachment in Buddhism, but the idea is to separate yourself from temporal experiences like an audition.
Right.
So to immediately say, well, the audition may not have gone well, but I'm still a wonderful person.
Right.
Rather than moving from the audition didn't go well, and that means I'm a stupid person or a bad person or an untalented person. So I think that mechanical turn up the script is a disidentification technique, which is smart.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate that, because looking back, I didn't know if that was the right thing or not, but as I've been an actor myself, an audition, you can really beat yourself up inside and
That's
think
right.
that people don't even like you. And that's a very unhealthy space to be in.
That's right. And
Mm.
creatives, performers, they forget that they're competing with so many people
Oh,
and that the people hiring them are actually looking for someone in particular, not the best person, but the right person. And what is rightness? That's all in the director's eyes.
exactly. So, could you give us a couple of ideas? So if somebody is listening to this podcast and let's say they have to go on an audition or they have to do a speech and they're really struggling with anxiety, what is one thing or two that they could do? I know that they should call you and book a session with you, of course, and we'll put that on the podcast, but just like immediate things, what can someone do to tame that anxiety?
The first thing is be prepared. As many actors have said, learn your lines. Being unprepared provokes anxiety. So being prepared is a big deal one. I believe in visualizations. I have a book of many visualizations called Redesign Your Mind. The idea there is to picture your mind as a room and to actually redesign it and redecorate it. And one of the visualizations includes when you enter the room, when you flip on the switch for the light, that doubles as a calmness switch. So every time you enter your mind, you flip that switch and immediately get calmer. If that visualization doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work. But if it does, you can have an instant way of getting calmer just by visualizing that switch being
awesome.
flipped.
Now, I want to be clear on this. So they visualize the switch and it's the calming light, but their life inside, is it pictures of their life of where they've been?
No, it's an actual room. No, you enter the room, you install windows so a breeze blows through so you don't have such a stuffy inner life. You get rid of that bed of nails that so many people live on. You replace it with an easy chair.
I love that.
Etc. It's really it's physically redesigning the room that is your mind so that it's the place you want to be. Most people don't want to be in their own mind because it's a self-pestering place or an anxious place.
Right.
So cognitive therapy, teaches us to change our thoughts. This, I think, goes a step further. This changes the source of our thoughts. So we start to think new thoughts. That's why I think redesigning our mind is a cool idea.
I truly love that, actually. So tell me, all right, so first of all, like I said, I read his bio and it's amazing. And he's actually written the Rethinking Mental Health blog for Psychology Today. So what do you write about on there?
Well, I believe in and belong to folks who have three names for what they do: critical psychology, critical psychiatry, and anti-psychiatry. We don't really know which label we like the best. But the main point is we disagree with the American Psychiatric Association model of mental disorders. We don't believe that the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, is a real, honorable, legitimate book, but rather a shopping guide for psychiatrists. So you can tell where I'm coming from there. And that's what Rethinking Mental Health is about: shifting the conversation from a pseudo-medical model of mental disorder to a problems in living model of difficulty or distress.
Wow.
Not unlike what you're doing with here are things you can actually use
Mhm.
different from medicine, different from chemicals. Here are different sorts of things you can do. If you have a particular challenge, here are things to do to help with the challenge, rather than to act like it's a medical specialty.
Right. And we'll give the audience a sneak peek of, I had asked him where he kept his passwords and he wrote them down. And we have 11 versions of password books. And he's so sweet that he said, I want you to send that to my wife. So that tells you so much about you as a person. I want to talk about you for a minute. So how do you, if you're having a bad day and like your day's not, it's just not organized and you just kind of don't feel right, how do you organize yourself in the daytime? What type of things do you do?
Well, on a practical level, it's just taking little breaks. I believe in short breaks, not leaving the encounter completely, understanding that you're returning.
Mhm.
I think that's an important point, because you can sort of go out the door and be done for the day and then not come back to your work. And I don't want to do that. So I have little 2-minute things I know to do, like make popcorn takes 3 minutes and 20 seconds to make.
Mhm.
I know exactly those sorts of things that allow me to take little breaks. But it's more attitude. It's more reminding myself why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I think so many people nowadays have lost the plot. They're
Right.
not sure what matters, or if they matter, or if what they're doing matters. We can all feel that. So when we have that experience, when that comes over us, like, this doesn't matter, or why am I doing this? And we have to kind of redon the mantle of meaning maker. We have to say, I make my own meaning. I have to announce my own life purposes. I have to get back in the saddle.
Yeah.
It's essentially a self-conversation. It's an ongoing daily self-conversation about, I'm continuing to show up.
Right. Absolutely. And also, as we were talking, sometimes you don't have a boss telling you, hey, you've got to get this done, especially in the creative world, right?
Right.
You've got to be your own cheerleader.
That's right. And or you may have deadlines, but they're in the distant future. Like if I have a book contract deadline, it might be mid-year next year, so I can act like that's no deadline at all.
Mhm.
It's sort of like getting your college paper done at the last minute. You had a deadline all along, but you didn't take it seriously until the last split second. So
Exactly. And we've all been there,
a
you know.
lot of creative performing artists have deadlines, but they're far in the distance. It's that painting show 2 years from now, so it's not it's not an imminent deadline.
Correct. Correct. So, quick question on that. We have a lot of people that call us and say, my mother or my son is struggling with Alzheimer's or things like that. And as the aging population, look at you.
Yep.
You're still going. And my
Yep.
parents worked their whole life. My mom is still working, and she's 81 years old. But for people who are, either retired or hitting that older market, they're having trouble with dementia, and they kind of feel like, whether it's writing that book or whether it's performing, that maybe I'm done, right? Maybe it's time to hang that up. Have you had people come to you like that?
Sure, it's a centerpiece of what I do, helping people there are two paradigm shifts I believe in. One is the shift from the idea of seeking meaning, that it's out there somewhere, to the idea of making meaning. I think it's on our shoulders to make meaning, that it's not out there anywhere. And then the shift from the idea of the purpose of life to the idea of multiple life purposes, that many things are important to us. So I try to help anybody of any age identify what's still important to them, or what can again be important to them. Because maybe some of the things that's important to a 70-year-old or an 80-year-old are not the things that used to be important. Maybe it used to be career and now it's service, but maybe they haven't thought through this shift from prior purposes to contemporary purposes. So that's easy work to do. It's easy for a
Yeah.
person. They may not get it at the first go round as to identify what's important, but even just this conversation helps.
Yeah. My mom always told me, always have something to look forward to, and she's living. She's lost her husband and her son,
Yep.
and she's living, and it's a choice, right? So I think that's very fascinating.
Yeah, and in addition to something to look forward to, something to love, because
Mhm.
we don't. I mean, we're a little squeamish about using the love word, but I think we do need to love things, and I think we fall in love purely when we're 5, 6, 7, 8. Whether it's with reading or with music or with film, or we fall in love without having, we don't have to be told why it's fun to read a book. We just know it's enjoyable. We
Right.
have those early loves, and then we kind of lose that loving feeling somewhere along the line.
Mhm.
And I think that's another one of the things that a coach and a client get to discuss is, what would you like to love now? And you may
Yeah.
have to impose the love to begin with. You may have to fake it till you make it, because you may not, because something that you love may be difficult to accomplish. So it may not be an easy ride, but by trying it, you may discover that it really was an opportunity.
Interesting. I'm a research hound. I love doing research. We had a woman wrote into us and we asked questions. If you have questions, let us know. One of the questions was this, and I just want to throw it out to you because she said that my biggest challenge is with my son. He never likes to read. I can't get him to read. He's in middle school, and reading, she was very passionate about that creates a person. If you got parents, and I know we have parents on this podcast, so any advice for them on those situations?
No, I do think we have to go with what our child's loves are. I mean, it's a little hard to just force or impose
Mhm.
what we think one should love or what we think one should be interested in. But I think let me say it one way. I was the house husband for our kids. And so I clearly modeled writing even when they were in a playpen. And then they got to sort of write beside me, so to speak, even when they were very young. So I wouldn't say it's a silly way to say it that you would model reading, but just to keep expressing your enthusiasm for reading, how much you love it, and to just sort of get your child to be curious about why you love it so much might be a way in. Ultimately, all human beings decide what's important to them or what interests them.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to sell a kid on something, I think the way to sell it is to do it yourself.
And that's called a lot of that's called mirroring, right? And I did that with my son.
Exactly.
You sit down at the table with a book or whatever, and then they will join you because they want to be where we are, right?
That's
And
right.
at a certain age, and then they don't. But well, I could talk to you for hours. But I do want to mention that Eric has a new book coming out, and I believe it is coming out. It's called The Coach's Way. And did you say it's in April 23?
Comes out in April, late April. Yep.
Mhm. Awesome. And they can get it at Amazon, or where can they get it?
Anywhere they get books, they can get it. And what's interesting about it's not just for coaches, it's for people who are thinking about being the client of a coach. It just looks very carefully and specifically at what goes on in sessions, how a session begins, what the middle of a session is, how it ends, what goes on between sessions. So I think it's a pretty good introduction to coaching for anybody who's interested in coaching.
Wonderful. I love that. Well, like I said, I could talk to you forever, but I got one last question for you. We ask all of our guests this. If you are on your way to a presentation, but it's just one of those days and all of your little tips, nothing's going right. It's just one of those days, and you're in the car or the train, you're going to prepare and do that speech or whatever that might be. How do you get game on? What is the song or the genre or the artist that you listen to in music that you listen to?
I'm going to give you three. I know that's a lot.
Mm,
Motown,
mm,
reggae, and
mhm.
Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl.
My favorites. My favorite. What is it? Leaving on a Train in Georgia. What is that? Uh,
Yes, I think that might be it.
Gladys Knight. Yeah, it's one of my
Gladys Knight.
favorite.
Didn't you want to be a Pip?
Yeah, exactly.
Who doesn't want to be a Pip?
Oh, there you go.
Unfortunately, many of the folks may not know what a Pip is.
No, I was
Gladys
going to
Knight
say,
and the
I know our
Pips.
younger audience doesn't. So you want to explain what that is?
Just that was the backup group of Gladys Knight, the
And the
Pips.
pips, yeah, exactly. When you said it, it didn't register, but now it did. So
Yes.
anyway, Eric, it's such a pleasure having you today. I thank you so much for being on our podcast. And definitely we want to talk to you again. But again, I graciously thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Angela Stevens. I'm the podcast host to Refocus Careers, and I'm interviewing such an amazing person on our other podcast. I asked him to be a guest on this podcast, and that is Eric Maisel. He is an author and he is a coach and he's a creativity coach. So we've never interviewed a creativity coach. So first of all, Eric, thank you so much for doing this. We graciously appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So did you know growing up that you wanted to be a creativity coach?
Oh gosh, no.
So tell us, where'd you go to
I
school for?
started
How
out
did, uh-huh.
I started out as a math and science boy. I thought I was going to be in physics. I went to a math and science high school in New York, Stuyvesant High School. Um, Started college too young at the age of 16, didn't really want to be there. Flunked out, and flunking out during the Vietnam War era in 1965 was not a brilliant thing to do. So then so to avoid being drafted, I enlisted, another brilliant idea. And then when I got out of the Army, I did that thing that people do when they have no idea what they're doing. I got a degree in philosophy.
Mm.
And then I started my first novel, and I've written probably 60 books since then. So my path was to be a writer, not a creativity coach. I started writing fiction. It did not make enough money, and we started having little kids. And so it did
Yeah.
not feel like acting in good faith to continue doing that. So I retooled, became a therapist, because psychological stuff always interested me. And so I became a California licensed family therapist. But almost immediately, I did not believe in the mental disorder model I was being taught. I
Mhm.
didn't believe that the people who were coming in had a disease. I thought they were having problems with living. And so very soon I began wanting to get out of that, but I didn't know where to go. And I was at an internship that allowed me to run a series that I think I called something like Creativity and Mental Health or something,
Mhm.
because creativity interested me. And I discovered that nobody was really working with artist types. That was not, this is a long time ago. This is before Julia Cameron's The Artist Way,
Mhm.
and before there were really books on the subject of how to live a creative life. So I segued, I moved, this would be about the age of 35. I moved from being a therapist to what I called a creativity consultant, because coaches weren't even around quite yet back
Of
then.
course. Mhm.
This is way back when. So I called myself a creativity consultant. And then when coaching became a thing, I kind of invented creativity coaching, whatever that is, 25 years ago or however many years ago that is. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So the creativity coaching crept up on me over time.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And for anyone that doesn't know, Eric will work with actors and writers and performers and anyone that's creative. And some of the issues that they run into would be performance anxiety, correct? What other areas
Not
that they
getting
would?
the work done, resistance, blockage, not
Yes,
completing work, and just uh, basically overwhelming chaos, because most creative folks have to maintain a day job. Then they try to squeeze their creating in somewhere during the day and try to squeeze all the rest of life in. So just organizing a life and managing a life, those are the sorts of things we chat about.
yeah, I love that. I love that. So, if someone on this podcast, we always interview different types of coaches, but if someone wanted to go along the path of being a creativity coach, should they get a degree in psychology or should they? I mean, because there's the new generation out there, some are debating the college route or not.
Absolutely.
But what would you recommend?
Well, I think it depends if it's a 22-year-old or a 38-year-old. I think it would matter as to that difference. Most of the people who become creativity coaches already have had a life in the arts or in therapy or in coaching.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's a degree. I think it's lived experience. Most people who come to it have been a visual artist or a writer or something, or a therapist. So I think the real background for becoming a creativity coach is to maybe already be a coach, to get some coach training,
Mhm.
and most importantly, to work with clients. It's one thing to learn things about how to coach, completely different to actually sit across from a person and coach. So that's more than workshops or trainings or this or that. Actually coaching, including volunteer coaching, just
Yeah.
enlisting your friends and peeps to do some coaching with you, that would be really the way in, would be to try your hand at it. Even if you feel like a complete beginner, which you may be. You and I talked on the other podcast, I think, about experimentation, or maybe that was earlier in the day. I was talking about
Mhm.
experimentation. But at any rate, that's the way to learn is through the lived experience of working with human beings. So the real training for being a creativity coach is to work with clients.
And you got to listen and have compassion, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So tell us, like, on a day-to-day basis. So what does your day look like? Do you have like clients lined up all day, or tell us the life of a coach? Because I always say, whether you're a pilot, what does that day look like? So what does it look like for you?
So I set aside typically between 12 and 14 client days a month because I only work with clients once a month. It's not that's the ideal number. It's that's all I can accommodate. Because at any given time, I'll probably have about 60 clients, maybe 40 of whom want a monthly session, 20 of whom are off that month. So I can only do 40 monthly sessions. If I set aside 13 days, let's say, it's typically about 3 clients a day on client days. And then other days are not client days. And I start each day at about 5:30 in the morning, and I start clients at about 9 in the morning. So I have a full day before my first client of my writing and other activities. And then typically I schedule clients at 9, 10, and 11 each client day. And that's my day. And then at noon I have lunch, and then there's another half day remaining. So it's, on the one hand, it's a full-time practice, but on the other hand, it's not really full-time at all.
I have a question. 9 to 11. Are those your on times, like where you do your best work?
I don't know if it's about best, but I don't want to say I don't give my clients my best, but probably my freshest neurons go to my writing, which is first thing each day.
Interesting.
It's
Okay.
it's that 5:30 a.m. time. I get directly to my writing each day.
Okay, perfect. So this is more of a generalized question. You've got a bunch of coaches out there. They might be life coaches. They might be creativity coaches. If you're trying to do this and you're new, what's the best way to get your name out there and to get people?
Well, first, let me say I train creativity coaches, so I think my trainings are good. They happen every February, June, and September. There's a 16-week introduction to creativity coaching training and a 16-week advanced training, and they can be taken simultaneously. So that's, I think, the possible training component. But beyond that, as you know, coaching is not licensed, so you can hang out your shingle as a creativity coach right now, instantly.
Yeah.
So if you're already a coach, I think you would just add it to your menu of things you do and start inviting folks to come do creativity coaching with you.
Awesome. Well, you're a success. There's no question. Check him out. He writes for the Psychology Today blog. He writes the Rethinking Mental Health blog. It's very impressive. He also has a new book coming out in April. It's called 2023. It's called The Coach's Way. So check him out. And what is your website again?
ericmaisel.com, EricMaisel.com.
Perfect. And let me tell you, if you've never met Eric, he is as genuine and nice and kind as a person you would ever meet. Once you meet him for the first time, you feel like you've known him forever. So I graciously thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.